Intermittent fasting isn't just a weight loss trend. The benefits go far beyond that, with one of the main ones being autophagy. Now, you've probably heard me talk about autophagy in previous videos, but the basic summary of what it is it's a process where our body breaks down damaged cells and regenerates new ones. And there are a few different ways to trigger autophagy or increase it. It's always happening in the body to some degree, but it really ramps up with intermittent fasting. So in today's video, we're going to break down everything you need to know about autophagy and intermittent fasting, how you can activate it, how to increase it, and common mistakes to avoid that can hinder your results when it comes to fasting. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Healthy Not Complicated podcast. My name's Kate, and I'm a nutritionist who specializes in insulin resistance, blood sugar control, and metabolic health. And one of the tools I use with clients is intermittent fasting. Now, a lot of people come to intermittent fasting because they're interested in weight loss, but they miss out on some of the benefits that stem from autophagy because of a few small mistakes. Understanding autophagy helps you to understand that there are deeper benefits. Things like a stronger immune system, it reduces inflammation significantly, it can help to slow down aging, it can help to prevent chronic diseases, and in a lot of cases, improve them as well. But a common misconception is that fasting is the same as starvation. And this isn't true. Fasting is about optimizing a natural healing system your body already has. And a lot of people nowadays, we miss out on the benefits that come from fasting because we're constantly eating. A lot of people nowadays, they eat first thing in the morning, they're snacking throughout the day, they eat a late night snack as well. They only spend a very small portion of each day in a fasted state. And by simply changing up your meal timing, you can unlock the benefits that come from intermittent fasting and autophagy. So let's start out by talking about what exactly autophagy is. I did give you like a quick couple sentence summary, but I want to dive into it a little bit more. So the translation of autophagy means self-eating. And as I said at the start of this video, it's when your body breaks down damaged cells and recycles and renews them. If your cells are damaged, which can happen to varying degrees and is a normal thing that can happen, processes in your body might not be working optimally, if that makes sense. So when you trigger autophagy, you kind of clean this up and your body just starts to function better. And this matters because it's linked to longevity, cancer prevention, brain health, and immune function. You can think of it like your body's spring cleaning. And autophagy is triggered by a few different things. It can be triggered by exercise. It could be triggered by heat or cold exposure in the right context. But the main trigger for autophagy and when it really ramps up is when your insulin levels are low. And your insulin levels are always going to be lowest when you're in a fasted state. And that's why fasting and intermittent fasting can be so beneficial for a wide range of reasons, but a lot of them stem from autophagy. So if you aren't familiar with intermittent fasting, or I guess fasting in general, basically, to be in a fasted state means you're not eating. So everyone is fasting overnight when they're sleeping. This counts towards your fasting window, the time when you're sleeping, because you're not eating. And as soon as you eat in the morning, that's when you break your fast and that's when you enter a fed state. Now, it is a little bit confusing. Generally, it is considered that your fast starts right after you finish your meal, but obviously your body has to process that meal. So you technically don't enter a fasted state immediately. It will happen probably 2 to 3 hours after you eat. But of course, this depends on how much you eat, the macronutrient breakdown of your meal, how much fiber you had, prolong how long it takes you to get into a fasted state, or help you to get into a fasted state quicker. Also, your current metabolic health. If you're someone who is insulin resistant, it's going to take you longer to get in a fasted state. And if you're someone who has good metabolic flexibility and good metabolic health in general, you'll be able to get into a fasted state quicker. I get this question a lot when your fast actually starts. And honestly, it's easiest to just go from as soon as you've finished eating your last meal and just say that's when your fast started. it's not worth getting too caught up in the exact numbers and the exact timing. Now, when we refer to intermittent fasting, we're basically talking about having a fasting schedule. A common one you've probably heard of is 16-8. So this means you're fasting for 16 hours every day, and then you're eating all of your all of your energy needs are coming in within an 8-hour window. This can look like pushing your breakfast back and not eating until noon, and then stopping eating at 8 p.m. So that's your 8-hour feeding window. And then after you finish eating, you fast overnight and you don't eat again till 12 p.m. the following day. And that gives you a 16-hour fasting window. Now, this is the fasting schedule that I see most commonly online. And the reason that this one is so popular is because, like I said, it takes a couple hours for you to actually enter a fasted state. And usually within this time frame, your body has gone through all of your stored carbohydrates and tapped into some of your stored fat instead, and your insulin level has dropped significantly. You've been in a low insulin state for long enough that autophagy ramps up. Some people will do like a 12-12 fasting schedule, which I also think is beneficial and is a great starting place if you've never fasted before and if you're curious about it, but skipping breakfast seems a little extreme to you and you don't think you'll be able to stick to it. Start with 12 hours. Some people fast for longer. They'll do like 18-6, which I think can also be good. And then, of course, other people will do like one meal a day, or they'll do alternate day fasting where they only eat every other day and they spend a whole day in a fasted state. Now, all of these strategies can be beneficial, and typically autophagy starts around the 14 to 16 hour mark. Well, if we want to get really technical, it is technically happening to some degree at all times, but this is when you really start to see it increase, is at about 14 to 16 hours, depending again on your metabolic health, your metabolic flexibility, if you're insulin resistant or not, if you have any issues with blood sugar, if you're diabetic, taking any medication that raises your insulin levels. I won't get too into this in today's video, but if you have been prescribed insulin, it is going to be really, really hard for you to take advantage of autophagy because, like I said, it occurs when your insulin levels are low. So if you're injecting insulin, then you're basically halting this. And that's why when you're eating, insulin increases, and this is why autophagy turns off. But if you want a good balance of getting the benefits of autophagy, but still meeting your energy needs within your feeding window while still getting enough protein in throughout the day, which is so important. And most people are not getting enough protein. Then I think doing a 14 to 16 hour fasting window is going to be the sweet spot. And especially if you do this on a consistent basis, then your body is going to become more metabolically flexible and you'll be able to get into a fasted state quicker, and you'll be able to get the benefits of autophagy maybe to a lesser degree than if you're doing a longer fast each day, but you're going to get it more consistently over time, if that makes sense. Autophagy really, really starts to ramp up when you've been fasting for 24 hours. And for most people, I don't think this is something that you need to do very often. Now, if you do have a lot of weight to lose, then yeah, doing alternate day fasting can be a very effective strategy. And yes, when you're doing this, you're going to have a lot of autophagy happening, obviously, on those fasting days. But if you can throw in a 24-hour fast, even just once a month, like I said, this is like spring cleaning for your body. And those damaged cells, that inflammation you're experiencing, it's going to reduce significantly. And when it comes to fasting, it really shouldn't be used as a punishment. I know a lot of people get stuck in this cycle of kind of binging and fasting, and yeah, they're treating it like a punishment. You really shouldn't be going into a fast, and especially an extended fast for 24 hours or more, if it's coming from this place of punishment. You should be coming into it mindfully, having good, consistent intermittent fasting routine, and that's when you're really going to get the benefits. Because yeah, when you get stuck in this cycle of binging and fasting, not only is that going to be taking away from the physical benefits, it's really hard mentally on you as well if you are in this cycle. All right, but how can you know if autophagy is happening? Because unlike our blood sugar, unlike our blood ketones, this isn't something that we can measure, or outside of a lab at least. So there are some signs you can watch out for. So one of the main ones is if your appetite regulates. So especially if you're first starting out with intermittent fasting, it can feel like you're really hungry, and it can feel really hard to hit that 14 or 16 hour mark. But once autophagy starts to ramp up, because it kind of goes hand in hand with low insulin and increased ketones, your appetite starts to regulate. So if you were hungry, if you were having cravings, as soon as you feel those kind of shut off, this can be a sign that autophagy is happening. And along with this, reduced cravings for sugar and carbohydrates. If you kind of feel like your mental clarity, like that fog has lifted off your mind, that can be another sign as well. If you do have a ketone meter, then increased ketones can also be a sign that autophagy is happening, because like I said, all of these things tend to go hand in hand. You might just get a burst of energy in general, which can be another sign. So these are just little things to watch out for. But like I said, it is impossible to track outside of a lab. You just have to kind of trust that if you are doing all of the right things, if you are consistent with your intermittent fasting schedule, that it is happening to some degree, and you will start to see additional benefits over time. Things like less inflammation, pain, or stiffness in your joints, clearer skin, or healing of skin issues, such as if you have eczema or psoriasis. You're going to have better appetite regulation throughout the day as well, so fewer cravings in between meals. Your digestion is going to improve, your sleep quality is going to improve, and you're going to recover faster from workouts. Those are more of the long-term benefits. You won't be able to see those immediately, but you can look out for the short-term ones and feel confident that you're on the right track. Now, let's talk about some common mistakes that actually stop autophagy. Now, when we talk about fasting, technically in its purest form, when you're fasting, you should be consuming 0 calories, 0 energy. A true fast means you're only having 0 calorie liquids, so things such as black coffee and tea, and also maybe replenishing some electrolytes. But a lot of people find it easier to stick to fasting when they consume a low amount of calories within their fasting window. So things like bulletproof coffee, which is coffee that's blended with grass-fed butter, and MCTs. MCTs are an interesting one. It stands for medium chain triglycerides. And this is a type of fat that actually can't be stored as fat in the body. It's processed differently than other types of fat. It goes straight to your liver, and it helps to increase ketones. So you are consuming calories, but MCT oil can actually help to enhance the benefits of fasting and help to increase ketone production and ramp up autophagy. And that's where it isn't so black and white. And the way I think of it is that if consuming bulletproof coffee, because a lot of people who are doing 16/8, they'll have a bulletproof coffee in the morning, still in their fasting window, and this helps them to push their first meal until later in the day. The way I see it is that if this is helping you to stay more consistent, if this is helping you to meet your fasting goal, then the pros of having a bulletproof coffee outweigh the cons. Because like I said, over time, you are going to have these doses of autophagy consistently, and that's going to be more beneficial than if you try to stick to a true fast and you aren't able to, and then you end up breaking your fast early all the time, or you end up giving up altogether. Can't stick to it. So you really have to weigh the pros and cons and take a step back, look at the big picture. I know a lot of people who I talk to, clients I work with, they'll kind of beat themselves up if they have like a handful of nuts within their fasting window or something like that. And what I always say is zoom out. At the end of the day, it's not about perfection. It's about consistency. You don't have to be perfect in fasting or in any area of your life in order to see results, because if you're perfect, but you can't stick to it long term, you're missing the point. You're not going to be able to harness the benefits long term. Building habits is what's going to lead to sustainable long term results. Another mistake that people make when it comes to intermittent fasting, or not really a mistake, but something that can hinder your results, take away from the benefits of autophagy, is if you have chronic stress. And I know this one can be hard to manage. When you're in a constant state of stress and your cortisol levels are elevated, this can elevate your blood sugar and your insulin levels, effectively turning autophagy off. Now, I'm a bit weary about talking about this one because it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle. If you're worrying about being stressed, that often makes your stress worse. But again, just come back to habits, and anything you can do, any breathing exercises or meditation, even just going for a walk, getting outside, even spending time with friends and family, anything that you can do to manage your stress is going to help you to better harness autophagy. And I guess this also kind of comes back to worrying about consuming anything, or I guess sticking to a perfect fasting schedule. Some people don't see results with fasting, and you can tell they're just super stressed out about it. Just take a step back, do what you can, do the little things right, and that will add up. Now, another mistake people make is going into a fast dehydrated and not replenishing electrolytes correctly. And by this, I don't just mean drinking water, because when you're fasting, you actually retain less water, but also fewer electrolytes. And to be properly hydrated, yes, you need to have enough water in your system, but you also need to have the correct balance of electrolytes. Now, there are a lot of electrolyte supplements on the market, and most of them are honestly not that great and a bit of a money grab. Anything that has added sugar or artificial sweeteners, this is going to break your fast. This is going to impact autophagy. But on top of that, a lot of these brands also don't really have that many electrolytes, and they don't have enough sodium specifically, which is really, really important when you're fasting. If you aren't getting enough electrolytes in during your fasting window, it's going to make intermittent fasting very difficult. Now, I know a lot of people, when they first start, if they aren't replenishing their electrolytes, they'll experience things such as headaches, fatigue, that brain fog we spoke about earlier. And yes, these can be signs that your body hasn't transitioned into a state of autophagy yet, but they also can be a sign that you aren't hydrated properly and you are low on electrolytes. So if you're really struggling to hit your fasting target, add in some electrolytes, and more often than not, that solves the problem. And that makes intermittent fasting so much easier. Now, if you're looking for a high quality electrolyte supplement that actually has a good amount of electrolytes and no added sugar, no artificial sweeteners, none of the bad stuff and all of the good stuff, I highly recommend Sodi. Their electrolyte blend is designed for fasting. It helps prevent headaches, dizziness, and fatigue, and keeps your energy stable while autophagy does its thing. I drink it during every fast, and it makes a huge difference. You can try it for yourself by heading to healthcoachkate.com/Sodi electrolytes. And don't forget to use my code HCK15 at checkout to save 15% off your first order. Now, let's get into autophagy for certain health conditions, because I know this is of interest to a lot of people, and especially when it comes to neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Like I said before, autophagy helps to clear damaged proteins and waste in the brain. This includes beta amyloid plaques linked to Alzheimer's. Pretty well demonstrated in the literature that fasting improves memory and cognitive performance, and this stems from autophagy. Regularly activating autophagy helps to support how resilient your brain is. And this helps reduce the risk of age-related decline. So of course, this is particularly beneficial as we age, but really prevention starts way before it gets to that point. Now, autophagy and cancer, this is another area that's been pretty well researched, but I mean, there still is a lot more research to be done. Now, of course, if you are doing this spring cleaning, if you are consistently getting rid of damaged cells and regenerating new ones, this helps to prevent cancer from beginning in the first place. And if you already have cells that have cancer, then it can help to get rid of them. And that's why it is so great for cancer prevention. Like I said, there has been a good amount of research on this area, but I'm really curious to see even more come out in the next couple of years. And now let's talk about fasting for insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, which is my area of expertise. If you guys have been around my channel for a while, if you've listened to my podcast before, you will know that this is the area that I specialize in. When you're insulin resistant, your insulin level at baseline is chronically high. And the way to reverse insulin resistance and improve insulin sensitivity is to bring that insulin down, because when your insulin is low, this allows your cells to become more insulin sensitive again. When you're insulin resistant, your cells are not responding to insulin correctly and they're not taking in glucose as they should. When they don't take in glucose as they should, the body produces more insulin to try to deal with the excess glucose, and then it just becomes a cycle. And of course, after about 10 to 15 years of being insulin resistant, that is when you will start to see your fasting blood sugar go up, and that's when you'll be diagnosed with prediabetes and eventually type 2 diabetes, unless you make the necessary diet and lifestyle changes that bring your insulin down and can improve your insulin sensitivity. And this is why intermittent fasting is so beneficial for insulin resistance, because as I've mentioned a few times in this video, when you're fasting, that's when your insulin is going to be lowest, because the main trigger and the thing that impacts our insulin levels the most is the food we eat. When we eat carbohydrates, they're broken down into sugar, and insulin is needed to take the sugar from our bloodstream to the cells in our body to use it for energy. So if you are constantly eating, if you're spending a long time each day in a fed state, then your insulin is always going to be high throughout the day. It won't be coming down in between meals, and you're not going to be spending any time or not a lot of time in a low insulin state. But when you're intermittent fasting, that means you're spending a good portion of your day in this fasted low insulin state. And that is why fasting is so beneficial for not only preventing type 2 diabetes, but also for reversing it. Now, if you've just been diagnosed with prediabetes, I'm going to link to another video up above that I posted probably last week or the week before on steps you can take that will help you to reverse it. So if you're curious about that, check out that video. But yes, one of the most effective tools is intermittent fasting. The other area that fasting and autophagy is great for is if you have an autoimmune condition. In some autoimmune diseases, dysregulated immune cells aren't cleared properly, and autophagy can help to remove them. As we've also mentioned today, intermittent fasting, and autophagy help to reduce inflammation. And of course, if you have an autoimmune condition, you are going to be inflamed in some way. Extremely beneficial if you have arthritis, Hashimoto's, any autoimmune condition. Now, we've talked a lot about fasting in today's video for autophagy, but I also wanted to touch on some other ways that you can boost it. And one of the ways is with exercise. Now, you're going to see a big increase in autophagy if you exercise during your fasting window. And when I say exercise, I'm talking about low to moderate exercise. You don't want to be doing high intensity exercise during this time, because that's going to increase cortisol, that can increase your blood sugar. That means that more insulin will be needed, and that can take away from the benefits. So low to moderate cardio is great, or resistance training can be good as well. And then we have cold and heat exposure. So this means taking advantage of things such as ice baths and saunas. You don't have to do them both together, but if you can do any form of cold plunging, or if you have access to a sauna blanket, that's a great way to get the benefits of fasting at home. This can help to increase autophagy as well. And these work because they are hormetic stressors that mimic some of the benefits of fasting. And one of those benefits is increased autophagy. Now, I really want to stress on a point I spoke about earlier, and that is that you can overdo fasting. If it's getting to a point where it feels extremely difficult to stick to, if it's getting to a point where it's stressing you out, then the cons are probably outweighing the pros, and it's time to take a step back, look at the big picture, and figure out a better fasting schedule that works for you. Especially for women, it's important to make sure that you are eating enough within your feeding window, and especially during the second half of your cycle. During this time, your metabolism actually increases and you're expending more energy every day. This is why we get hungrier right before our period. It's not out of nowhere. It's because our metabolism is actually working faster. But listen to your body. If it's becoming extremely difficult, then you need to reevaluate your approach. But anyways, guys, I am going to wrap this video up here. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you learned something. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about intermittent fasting or autophagy. I'd be happy to answer them. I try to answer as many questions as I can, especially right after I post the video. So if this just went live, go ahead, ask your question. I'll try to get back to you. And before you go, don't forget to check out today's sponsor, Sodi. Trust me, electrolytes can make a huge difference in how easy it is to intermittent fast. Now, if you're watching on Spotify, I would love if you could rate and review the podcast. That really helps me over there. And if you're on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe. Thanks, guys, for watching or listening, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.